Hello, everyone. I'm Coach Wanda, and this is the place where we dream, believe, and achieve. I have a really good friend with me here today who was in a near fatal car accident in the year 2013. And I'd like to introduce to you Miss Adrianna Novello.
Hi, I'm Adrianna. It's nice to meet you guys.
So, Adrianna, we're here today. This is a week of hope. And we know there's people out there who have gone through horrific times in their life, perhaps near fatal car accidents or other type of accidents that were near fatal. And they may be sitting out there and really struggling with how to move forward in life. And so what I thought we would do today is have you explain, go back to that day, if you don't mind, in 2013, so people can know what it is that you went through and that you've had to push forward from. But let's start back then, and you just explain to them what happened on that day.
So it was March 3rd of 2013. I was still in high school. The guy that I was with, he drove a 1970 Nova, and we were playing with it a little bit too hard. He was speeding on North Shingle, and we ended up losing control, and we hit a tree, impacted on my side, and it crushed my leg, and the car ended up splitting in half. I was ejected 75 feet. I hit a tree where I broke my lower back, and I really don't remember much after that point. I was in the hospital for a long time. I suffered from a double impact traumatic brain injury. I broke my back. I broke my floating ribs. I have herniated, compressed, and bulging discs throughout my spine. I lost my right leg below the knee. And just kind of one thing led to another. And so I've had multiple surgeries to fix things. It was a hard time. So I was 16. So I was kind of in that time of like self-image and what I look like. And I really struggled with the thought that my body was altered. I didn't look like that ideal, like I didn't look like what I wanted to look like. And I really struggled with that. But I learned over time that was okay. Because a lot of people, they'd be like, we look at like your leg is awesome. How cool is that? And I'm like, it's customizable. So I kind of worked off of that. And I was like, okay, you know what? This is pretty cool. So we definitely took comedy into it, like make fun of it, use comedy, and definitely surround yourself around people who care. That was the biggest thing for me. Like I had my family and my friends. I had a really supportive group around me. Shriners took me in, so I had the support of Shriners also. They were absolutely incredible. And so just kind of, I had so much support from all different directions, and I ended up learning that throughout a long time. It took me a couple of years, but I learned that I was okay, and that it was going to be okay.
So that car that you were in hit a tree and it split in half. I mean, yeah. In my entire life, I have never heard of a car accident where a car hit something and literally splits in half, and yet you survived. And so you're talking about having this self-image issue with having a prosthetic leg and things, but you are so lucky to be alive.
That was a big thing too. It took me, honestly, I still kind of have a hard time wrapping my head around it, but it took me a long time to just acknowledge that being alive was kind of just incredible in itself. And now that I'm older and I can look back on it, it's pretty cool. I'm proud of myself for everything that we went through. And I definitely had guardian angels that day, because even when we had the police officers and then the forensic team trying to figure out what exactly happened, they still can't figure it out. Like things don't line up, or where I landed and what I hit and how we survived. So it worked, and I'm okay, and I'm lucky. And so, yeah.
That's the most crazy accident that I think I've ever heard of. But you must have struggled at some point with anxiety and depression.
Yep.
Tell me about that.
That's probably I would have to say that my brain injury and my spinal injury were the two worst parts of the whole car accident. Everybody always says and thinks that it's my leg, and it's not. My leg is the easiest.
That's because that's what they can see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But my leg is the easiest part. I think it's kind of cool, and I have no issues with it. But it's definitely the anxiety and the depression. I have PTSD, and the structure of my brain changed. It was, I think, different. I had to relearn how to read, write, talk.
So let me cap on that. I recall you saying that you missed a whole lot of school.
I missed a lot of school.
Okay, so you were what? You were a junior in high school at that time, I think?
Yes.
And I think I recall you saying something to the effect that your teachers didn't believe that you would graduate. And you thought, holy cow, I'll be darned. I am going to graduate. I don't know how I'm going to do it, because as I remember, you couldn't talk very well. You couldn't walk. You couldn't do anything like you did before when you were learning with reading and writing and all the things that you need to do. And so when you were telling them you were going to graduate, they didn't believe that you could. So tell us about that and how that went.
Well, so I had some teachers that were amazing. And the principal of my high school, she was incredible. She was like, okay, everybody just pause her grade where she's at. And so I had some teachers who did that, and then I had others that didn't. And so those teachers expected me to start right where I left off. So even though I had to relearn how to read, write, talk, communicate, have thoughts of my own again, I also had to know and how to answer advanced algebra questions. And you could see how that didn't really work out too well. So we had a lot of clash with certain teachers like that. But so like one of the classes that I can think of, I had 106% on the day the car accident happened. I ended up graduating, or I ended up ending the semester with a C- in the class. So I had that buffer, luckily, but I ended up obviously failing all the assignments that I did. But I had, back to the support group, I had an amazing home hospital teacher who kind of sat me down, and every day she was like, okay, let's write your name. And it looked like you handed a toddler a crayon. But slowly she said, the more you practice, the more it's going to trigger those neurons to connect. And so there was a lot of tears, a lot of crying, a lot of frustrations, but eventually it kind of got better and better. And then by the middle of my senior year, I was almost back to normal. I was able to acknowledge and comprehend my school assignments. I wasn't 100% back, but just kind of pushing through. I didn't take a school break, so I worked all throughout summer, both between my junior and senior year and after my senior year, just so I could graduate. But
I think it is so cool. I think one of the things that I love about your story, especially being a certified life coach now myself, is that you believed you could do it. You believed in yourself. You knew you had something within you that said, yeah, I have all the strength in the world to do what I need to do to graduate. And you had people that didn't believe in you. And, there's people that get caught up in thinking that they can't do certain things because they compare themselves to other people, whether it's their looks or their job or whatever the case may be. And it's like, if you just put things between you and God, and you believe you can do it, and that with the power within you is just immeasurable, I just think it's so cool that you said, I'm going to do this, and you did.
There was definitely times where I questioned it. Even to this day, I look and I'm like, what am I doing? But I felt challenged. And so being challenged, I was like, no, we're gonna prove you wrong. But on days that I had low, like I'd go to my mom and I'd be like, hey mom, like I can't do this. And she'd look at me and she's like, okay, well, if you're just gonna quit, I guess that's it. And then I looked at her, I'm like, what? like what are you saying?
Yeah.
She's like, well, if you're a quitter, like that's just, I guess that's what you're gonna do. And then so she'd kind of push me. She's like, you can do better than this. If you're okay quitting and being where you're at, she goes, that's fine, you can do that. She goes, but that's not my daughter. That's not who I raised. And so, and then I'd be like, okay, fine. And so then I like push through. So honestly, the support group, like if just put people around you who care about you. Like I had those people who didn't believe in me, who kind of challenged me to do better. But honestly, it's the people who did believe in me that pushed me to do more than I thought I could.
That's awesome. So tell me, as you were struggling, can you define what was the most difficult thing for you? Just for viewers who are struggling right now that may be interested in knowing what was the most difficult for you, but you overcame it. That might be a good thing for people to hear.
That it wasn't enough. That was
that
a big
you weren't
one.
enough.
Yeah, that I wasn't, that the world, I felt beaten down. Like the world just kept stomping on me over and over and over again. Like once I started getting up and pushing myself up to stand up again, something else would just pummel me to back down. And I just felt beaten over and over again for years on end, probably 4 or 5 years. I just felt like every time I got a step up, it would just be ripped out from underneath my feet. And that was hands down the hardest part, where I questioned, like, what am I doing? Why do I even try if every time I do something that it just crumbles beneath me and it doesn't work? Or I do one thing and it turns out to be 2 things worse. So pushing, I realized that even though the things that I was doing weren't giving me results immediately, they were still kind of my stepping stones to where I am now. Mm-hmm. So even though I wanted to quit, I can't even tell you how many times that I just broke down and I was like, I am not enough. I can't do this. And I just wanted to just be done. Everything that I worked towards to get me to that point would have been wasted. So just keep putting in that hard work. Keep it up, because even if it feels like it's not doing anything, it's doing something.
It's kind of like when you plant a plant, it needs to be rooted, so you got to keep nurturing it and watering it so it can grow. And yep. Too often people like say, I'm going to do this, and they know the results that they want, but they want the results tomorrow. But you had to go through the watering it and nurturing everything you were doing to get to the end result that you wanted, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know if
it was so much more. Like it's hard to even explain. It was just so much, and I'm glad that I pushed through every moment, because there was so many times where I just wanted to just be done. Like this was too much.
So what was it? Was it the people that were positive influences in your life that helped you get through that most difficult thing, which was I'm not enough? What was it? Because it seems like now you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you are so enough. What was it that got you to where you are now? How did you finally get there? I know it took a lot of hard work and not giving up. And that's what you told people just now. Don't give up.
Just don't. Find something that you love. That I had to have something to work towards. I had to think, like, I want my life. The big thing for me is, like, I don't want to be here for the rest of my life. Like I didn't want to be in pain for the rest of my life. I didn't want to, or let me rephrase, I didn't want to wallow on my pain for the rest of my life. I didn't want to be in that wheelchair. I didn't want to not be able to sign my own name. I wanted to be able to go out and hang out with my friends again. I wanted to be able to get married and have kids. I wanted to be able to start my own business. I wanted to be a person again and like kind of make my own name. But I didn't want to be where I was. So knowing that there was something other than where I was stuck was a big thing of hope for me. But I also had my passions, like my animals were huge for me. Like the cows and the horses and my dogs, and they were something that I really loved. And so when I was having a hard time, the best piece of advice is make sure you have something that you love. Like if you are into cars, or if you love going to the beach, or like if you love writing or reading, like have that escape if you need it. So there's so many times that I'd just be having a horrible day, or like if I got a phone call being like, hey, your surgery failed, you need to go in for another one. Right as I got accepted into nursing school, they were like, no, you need more surgeries. It failed, it didn't work. So on that situation, I went out to the pasture and I just sat and I cried for hours. And then I just like gave my dog a hug, and like that was my happy place. So
I remember seeing a beautiful picture of you in the wheelchair out with, I think it was with the horse.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so beautiful. But it's kind of like finding joy in the process. Like
you have to
finding joy in the process, something that, you have to believe that you're going to get to that point. But you need to find, because you can't expect that it's going to happen overnight, but you'll get there with God's help. And so finding joy in the process, like you say, is so important.
It's so important. And finding a time to laugh. That I found that laughter was probably the best healing, like the best thing to heal that we found. So like after I lost my leg, I was still in the hospital, and we cut up like little pieces of paper and made my leg look like the residual part of my leg look like Snoopy. Or we'd put I'd get a stick and put a broom, or put the stick for the end of the broom, and I'd put a slipper on it and then cover it with the sheets. And when the nurse came in, I'd wiggle both, and kind of like you have to find ways to laugh still, because if you can't laugh at the situation that you're in, eventually, like sometimes you're in a situation where you just can't laugh. But if you look back on it and you're like, okay, that was hilarious. Or if you can't find a part of a situation that you're in that you can laugh about, then you need to reevaluate where you're at, because you have to be able to find something to smile at. Otherwise you're just going to kind of keep going forever with a frown.
Oh, well, I recall as well that you started, after going through all that and still dealing with what you deal with on a daily basis, you had started 2 nonprofit programs.
Yeah.
Can you tell people about that?
Yeah, we started Steer for the Cause.
She's amazing, you guys. She's amazing.
We started Steer for the Cause, and then Amputee Families. So my mom she manages and runs the whole amputee family aspect. She has a Facebook page that's blown up. It's ridiculous. Which is pretty much like a support group for families that have suffered through the process of losing limbs, or need to, or maybe they have an ongoing situation that they are going to have to lose their leg, and they're looking for advice. And are like, okay, what's the next step? Or like, my son just lost his leg. What next? Because a big thing is that we didn't know what was next. When we were in the hospital, I remember I looked at my mom and I'm like, well, now what? Like, how do I get a leg? Like, how do I walk? What do we do? How do I, like, what is this blister? Like, what do we do? And so we had to figure out the hard way through a lot of things. And so there was a point where we were like, okay, we need to create a way to tell other people like what we learned, so they don't have to do what we did. So that's what Amputee Families is all about.
That's so cool.
And Steer for the Cause kind of helps fund amputee families. So like we'll go out to hospitals, and like I'll get a call from Shriners, and they'll be like, hey, this girl, she's 13 years old. She just lost her leg in a traumatic accident. Can you come talk to her? Or when that bombing occurred, I remember there was a couple of kids went to Shriners. And so I remember going there and talking to a couple of them, and I'm like, hey, it sucks. Like what happened, it sucks, but you're going to be okay. And like, this is what you need to expect. And like, I took off my leg. And I'm like, this is what it looks like. This is how it works. I'm like, and you can customize it, and you can do this with it, and you can still run. And that was a big thing, like telling them like, you can still do things. Like just because you lost your leg or you lost your arm doesn't mean that you can't go run, or you can't ride your bike, or you can't run, like go on the beach or anything. So that's pretty much what it's all about. And then Steer for the Cause kind of correlates troubled families or families that need assistance through whether it's like mental or physical complications or issues, and agriculture. So like we'll donate a steer, for instance, and then a 4-H or FFA member will take this animal and raise it through the entire process, and we'll supply funds for it so they don't have to pay a penny, and we'll get sponsorships. And then at the end of the day, they sell it, and whatever funds they make gets donated to a hospital, a children's hospital of their choice. So whether that's commonly it's Shriners, but we've had it go to a couple other places. So
Oh, that's so cool. Wow. So when you think about this whole life-changing experience, what has been the most positive thing that has changed in your life? What is the most positive thing that has happened in all this?
The person that I turned out to be.
Aw.
Hands down. Looking back at it, I was a naive, pain in the butt 16-year-old. Like the world revolved around me. I didn't like, you know, like I had my
Aw.
priorities, and thinking about it, that's not the person that I wanted to be. And I'm not sure who I would be today if the car accident happened, but I'm really glad that it did, because I'm pretty proud. I'm happy with who I am, because I've learned I've learned so much, and I've met so many incredible people, including you. Like I would have never met you,
Aw.
and we would have
Aw.
never been talking if
Oh,
any of that didn't happen. So
it's so empowering to like listen to you and to know that other people may be watching, they're struggling with horrific accidents they've been in, and to hear that even though they're going through horrible, horrific, difficult times, if they keep pushing through,
it'll be
there's a
okay.
blessing that's going to be waiting on the other side.
It's worth
You
it.
know, there's
It's worth
gonna
it.
be a blessing. I'm getting the chills right now because I know it, you guys. I know this, and it aligns with biblical principles. If you keep pushing through and you keep believing and you know that God is there with you and supporting you, there is going to be a blessing on the other side. And so I'm reflecting back upon that beautiful picture. I recall a picture of you the day that you graduated, and
Yeah.
it was so meaningful. I want you to explain to the viewers, take us back to that moment of what you were doing and what you were thinking.
I don't know. I I'm gonna be honest. I just remember sitting there with all of my friends, and we were the next row getting ready to go up. And I remember I've always called him my brother. He's always been so close to me. And he looked over at me and he was like, "What are you gonna do when you're up there?" I'm like, "What do you mean? What am I gonna do? I'm gonna grab my diploma and I'm gonna walk off." He goes, "Well, why would you do something like that? Like you're so much more like you should do something." And I'm like, "No, I'm not gonna do anything." And then another one of my friends was like, "You need to do something." So I was like, "Well, okay." I didn't know anything. And then I started walking up there and I was like, I know exactly what I'm gonna do. Like it's just, I thought about it and I'm like, it's so suiting. And so when I was just walking up there, I wasn't nervous at all, which I thought was weird. I felt like I really should be, but I wasn't nervous. And I shook my principal's hand, she was amazing so supportive throughout the whole car accident anyways. And I just bent over and I took off my leg and I threw it up in the air and I screamed 2014 and then put my leg back on and I took my diploma and walked off.
Oh my gosh, I remember seeing that picture of you holding it up and just yelling, and it was just,
Everybody went absolutely crazy. It felt really empowering
I'm getting
because,
the chills right now as I'm thinking about it.
well, everybody in my graduating class was so, like, they were incredible. They were so supportive. Like if I remember one of my first times going back to school, like I didn't go straight back into school. I went part-time kind of thing, and slowly but surely I was still in my wheelchair going through classes. And I just remember being on the verge of a mental breakdown. And one of the classmates, I'd never met him before. Like, well, I had probably, but I had no clue who he was. And he just kind of was like, "Hey, you want to go outside?" And like get some water or do you want some snacks? And he like handed me a Cheez-Its and we went for a walk and I just like broke down and I cried with him. And then we went back to class. And so everybody was just so like, I felt, yeah. And then that was kind of,
I mean, just to look at that picture and know, I mean, granted, you had a ton of support, but you also had those people who didn't believe you could do it. And you always had it inside of you. You knew you were going to do it. You knew you were going to do it. And that's what believing and having faith is all about. You know?
I think throwing my leg up there was also kind of like flipping them the bird. It was like, you know, guess what? So there was one or two specific teachers out there that we had some issues with. And I remember telling you about that. And a couple of classmates too. And I was like, you know what? Here, look this.
Well, you know, it's so funny because as a life coach, you know, it's like a lot of people talk about having faith and they think it's just believing something. You know, you're a perfect example of the definition of faith is truly stepping out in action. Faith is not just believing. Faith is believing combined with taking action. And that's what you did. And it's just so freaking awesome, you know, in this broken world right now, where the people are just filled with anxiety and anger and war going on. You know, I feel as though your story is making a difference, a positive difference, and helping change the world where people may be struggling. What can you leave those people with? If you could look someone in the eye right now that is watching you and has been sitting there intently listening to your story, if you could look them in the eye and give them hope somehow, what would you tell them?
Everything happens for a reason, even if you don't know what that reason is. And even if the situation is, you feel like it's well beyond something that you can handle, it's leading you somewhere, and just making it to that end destination will be worth it. And dwelling on what sucks and the hardships isn't going to get you anywhere. You need to focus on you need to focus on what you have. Even if you feel like it's nothing, you can think of one thing. If you are just bedridden for weeks, months, maybe even years, and you've just been told nothing but horrific news, you need to be able to maybe look and just be like, I have my dog. Or you need to look and be like, I still have a way to talk. I still have a way to communicate. I still have fill in the blank. Like I have something, even if it's something so small, you just need to be able to say, I still have this, and focus on what you have instead of the negatives, because that'll get you through that moment in time. And getting through that just next moment is the hardest part. And just keep going through each moment, even if you feel like it's leading you nowhere. It could go on for years, but eventually it's going to be better.
For sure. Just believe, find joy in the process, like you said. Yeah.
It'll be worth it.
Well, gosh, Adrianna, I am so thankful that you joined us today. I'm sure that you're providing so much hope for a lot of people out there, and we thank you so much.
I hope so.
And to all our viewers for tuning in, I want to thank you for being with us today. And always dream, believe, and achieve. We'll see you next time.